Aloha. All right, moving right along in our series. So this prolapses is also on the vaccine slide, that PowerPoint. It's on Laulima, and then body condition score will be also on there, but I'll have a separate video for that, just to keep these in more of sound bites. Okay. So prolapses are a very unfortunate yet fairly frequent, sadly, especially without proper culling practices. They can really retain their phenomenon. We have it with both goats and sheep. Have it with pretty much every kind of animal we have, right? Cattle have, swine have, right? And so prolapses are a really serious problem. It can definitely result in a loss of your ewe and probably whatever lambs are in there. Okay, infections are really going to be the main culprit, along with just real physical distress. Okay, we'll look at it that it can. It prevents urination, okay, from the ewes, and so it's really really an unfortunate phenomenon. But we do have a number of means to address it. Okay, so prolapses, vaginal prolapses, are generally happening during the last month of pregnancy, so right about when we're getting there, right, to lambing. But then they also happen a number of times after lambing. Okay. So one sign here, this is a nothing else going on here except for a prolapse. Okay, she's very pregnant. Okay, and you can see that on the laying down we have a really significant protrusion. Okay, so extension of the vagina in a ball-like form, right? Because there are kiddos and there are lambs in there, right? Is noticed generally when lying down. Okay, when the ewe is lying down, and then when she gets up, generally sometimes it'll stay and sometimes it'll go back in. So the time to be really watchful, right, to catch early stages is to be able to get some eyes on your animals while they're laying down. So by this token, right, if you see a ewe out and about walking with a prolapse, then that's generally well along the way. Okay. If as I just mentioned just now, if it remains extended and prolapsed while the animal's walking, then you need to kind of stop drinking coffee and get to it. Okay. So with a lot of these physical problems, okay, we're really going to be looking at culling fairly quickly. Problem here is with prolapses, right, is that we don't see it until they're right about to lamb. Okay, so this is where records come in super helpful, right? But we are going to doubtlessly we're going to want to cull whatever this ewe for the next breeding season. Okay, we're not going to want to, if we find a ewe with a prolapse that's about to lamb, okay, we don't want to rebreed her. We really don't. Prolapses are really demanding. Okay, it takes a lot of attention, takes a lot of time rechecking, and it's things that can easily become a problem again. Okay, so as I mentioned, prevents urine from leaving the bladder. Okay, and so this is just another reason. Physical distress. Okay, animals with prolapses are really not in a good physiological place, and so with infection is going to be a problem in 2 seconds. the animal is going to be in severe distress very shortly because of her inability to urinate, right? And then our lambs are in there, as I mentioned, okay? And so a stressful ewe has no good results on their lambs, okay? So we want to correct this very quickly. So, essentially, hope y'all aren't eating breakfast right now. Essentially, we're going to push the prolapsed vagina back inside, and then we're going to keep it there, okay? It's kind of a threshold thing, right? After the conditions are already met for a prolapse to happen once, that threshold is pretty much broken, and it's going to want to do that every time, okay? So, how are we going to go about this? We're going to use a vaginal retainer, okay? Which is exactly that, okay? And we'll look into what we're going to do. Bucket of warm disinfectant solution, animal lubricant, and the retainer itself. So first, just like now, right? We're going to wash our hands really super well, okay? Imagine that infection is one of the major problems here, and we could be as much a problem in trying to correct for a prolapse as the thing itself, okay? Really going to want to make sure your hands are clean because you're going to be going inside the animal, okay? Wash the protruded area, right? Which will be very clear what that is, with the disinfectant solution, right? And apply lubricant to the whole area afterwards, okay? Either a fist or a clenched hand, okay? You're going to essentially push, trying to back in, okay? Super important to have your hand be a unit, one unit, right? Not this. Oh God, not this, right? Okay? You need to be very careful here because a lot of damage can happen, which then is going to get infected in 2 seconds, and depending on how far out you got before those lambs are is really going to have a bad effect on your lambs, okay? Remember, the most important thing a lamb can do is receive colostrum, okay? So even if we're going to be culling this animal later, we really want to see her through her lambs, at least, okay? Hopefully she'll just get right along and have a good old time at whatever area adopts her. But we'll be selling her to the slaughterhouse. All right, so once prolapse is back inside, you're going to need to physically maintain pressure to keep that happening. I mentioned the threshold, okay? Once the threshold happens, it's gonna happen again. So, right, you reinsert and then maintain, okay? And that's where our urination will take place because, as we mentioned, the prolapse prevents urination. So, essentially, when you're doing this, you'll feel when it's back in, right? But you will get more reassurance that you are where you need to be as soon as urination begins. So, be nice. Don't be in a rush. Allow full urination to happen, right? And then we'll continue, okay? So, here's a vaginal retainer, okay? Essentially, it's the middle here is inserted into the vagina that you have just pushed back in, okay? And then these are going to be going around the back of the animal, and then depending on the type of model, okay, these string types, many are just tied to the wool that are on the haunches of the animal, okay? Or we have harnesses for hair animals as opposed to wool animals. But we will see. All right, so wait for the animal to finish urinating. When you have pushed in, when the animal is urinating, your hand is inside, okay? You allow the urination to happen, And then under your hands inside, you're going to insert the retainer, okay? And you want that retainer to be sure that it's falling asleep here. You want that retainer to be sure to be butted right up against the cervix, okay? You want it to make sure that before you take your guide hand out, right, that you can tell and know that the retainer is butted up against the center back of the cervix, okay? And then after the insertion is there, holding the retainer with one hand against the back of the cervix, and then removing your guide hand, okay? So then we only have the retainer. And then this is an example. I'm sure you can't probably see these pictures from here. This is an example of a wool sheep, okay? And the retainer just being tied, those little tie-offs just being tied right to the wool there. That's fine. That's great. For animals, especially us out here, that will be very difficult to do. And so we have harnesses that the retainer is then hooked onto. So here, let's look at a picture of one. There's one right here with a nice customer testimonial. Okay. So this is actually this is very nice. This is a very nice one. Okay. So we have the retainer in the vagina, right, and then the whole body harness holding everything in place. They're a little large, and they got to take the whole animal, right? Because it's really important that thing stays exactly right where it's going to stay. Okay. Yeah, and generally lambing will be fine. Okay. It doesn't block lambing. It doesn't prevent lambing. Okay. There's, especially on mature ewes that are proven, okay, there's plenty of room. And it's not, if it is going to be a problem, right, you'll notice pretty quickly, and for that reason, you're gonna wanna have, especially if you have more than one animal with retainers, and hopefully you don't, unless you just started out and got a bunch of breeding stock from cousin somewhere that you have no idea what it is yet, right? But if you do have some kind of bad genetics that you're working with, and you have a group of animals that are prolapsed, then you'll want to put them together so you can have adequate management and eyes on them easier, right? Ruminant lambing, if you really notice an issue, you can go ahead and remove before or after is fine. If you don't, many times we wake up and go out to the barn and they've lambed, right? So if that's the case, then just go and remove the retainer afterwards. No problem. They definitely don't always work, and they're, depending on your background, right? Some backyard folks are not okay with this kind of stuff, right? Or not. And so a lot of folks defer to vets on these, which that's great. If you have the resources available and a vet available, that's great. So you can suture the vulva after a vet, right, can suture the vulva after it's been reinserted for a more solid, I was gonna say long term, but we're still gonna cull these animals, right? But for a more hands off, right, approach, because your vet will be the one inserting also, right? And that's a good option. Yeah, if I mentioned the threshold thing a couple of times now, and I'll say it again. If it happens on one pregnancy, you can be pretty sure, right, dollars to pesos, right, that it's going to happen the next time. So, it's not a good idea to to put the animal through it, right? And we know that when we can be awfully sure that that's going to happen. Okay, we don't want to put the animal through any undue stress. Sad to say what the alternative is, but for a production system, these are not good. Okay, and we want to cull these animals fairly quickly so we can not have to deal with this. A quick note on embryo losses: poor nutrition, diseases, and stress can definitely cause a loss of embryos or fertilized eggs, right? Gathering, processing, dipping, and shearing. We mentioned that those first 2 weeks were super important to get that embryo to hook, right? To set. Okay? Those first few weeks, we really don't want to process animals. We don't want to drench animals. We don't want to walk them through a drench or a moat, right? We don't want to vaccinate. We don't want to round them up, right? Because it's going to really cause a lot of stress, especially in that first window. It can lead to a lot of losses. All right, trying to think if there's anything that I missed there, but I don't believe there is for now. I'll just make another video. Right, Herman? Right. Thank you, you guys. See you in a minute.